Good afternoon, and thank you for everyone's patience whilst I've been getting the new sort of studio set up. We're still only part set up. And so I've got a slightly different camera position whilst we sort out fixings for overhead shots. So I'll have to be doing lots of this, just so you can see what's going on. We're now at the stage of printing a colour Mokulito. So I have here another tester piece, just so you can see the different effects. We've got some touche, some crayons, some oil, some rubbing sticks, general stuff that we'd had in the black and white Mokulito. And I have here some lovely magenta ink, and that's going to be our colour for the sort of the main areas. And I'm just going to show you basic inking up in colour. And then we're actually going to do some rollover work, which again I'll do in the same video. So I'm just going to crack on now with the colour work. So I'm just giving the Mokulito plate a good wash to remove the gum Arabic. It's been sitting under gum for actually, several weeks, because obviously I ended up with a period for a few weeks without full access to filming facilities. Whoop. Okay. Thankfully, the new washroom print shop is a lot cooler. I'm not in the kitchen where there's a wood burning stove, which was quite hot, and I've also got a lovely view outside. So I'm just inking up now. As I've mentioned earlier, ideally you have a roller that is wider than your printing plate. Obviously mine is not, and that's because I'm going to be using that little roller, the wider one, to do the rollover in the next sort of half of this video. And it's more important with the rollover that the width is wider. So I've done that. We're going to be printing the Mokulito under the press here, the Gunning Arts printing press. You can obviously print it by hand. You'll note I'm not removing any of the black marks or the touche or anything like that. In traditional stone or zinc plate lithography, you would now go in with a turpentine solution to remove all that. With Mokulito, you shouldn't need to. And the turpentine and the white spirit would affect your wooden plate. So I'm just inking up. Again, apologies this isn't in plan, I will show you at various stages. It's obviously more difficult when working with colour to see where you've been. You can begin to see purple going on the touche areas. You'll also note the tram lines, which I've talked about before, with the shorter roller. Just have to do some clever inking, and they do go away, and a good squeeze of water, and you can get rid of most of it. I can kind of see from looking at it that the touche and the black crayon are no longer solid black. They've got a thin layer of purple or magenta on them. You might have heard that squeak. That's my daughter, 6-year-old daughter, who's currently crouching down out of shot, and squeaked at the mention of pink. So if you occasionally hear it, it's not a mouse, it's actually just her watching what I'm doing. So as I say, it's more difficult to see where you've been because you don't come up with a nice thick black infill. Just going to pop a bit more ink on. told you is how to reach over the camera. Good. I think actually looking at that I will hold it up. I'm just going to get rid of some of these tram lines. Some quick rolls over. See if I can get rid of them the best I can, or blend them into something. There we go. Just need rid of a good moisten of water can also remove. Oops, sorry, that's our kitchen door slamming. Some of the tram lines. So you can see, obviously, the areas that were black with the drawing materials are no longer, and you've got a sort of the grain, obviously, of the plywood picked up. Just going to give that a sort of waft around to dry it. Incredibly windy outside here. Feels like everything's having good spring clean. Right, that is pretty much dry enough. So that goes on to printing press. I have here some beautiful Japanese paper from the Awagami factory. My staple at the moment. I'm a bit obsessed with Japanese paper. It's so versatile. It's quite incredible stuff. As I say, you can hand print this. I am just abusing the facilities of the press. And there it goes. Oh look, I'm in the picture. This is really rather odd. I don't really like being in pictures and videos. That's why I quite like the plan shots. I'm just going to bring that out. Just going to move my press out a bit. Hang on. Whoop. So go up a bit more. There we go. Brilliant. I can actually bring the whole thing over, it'll be easier for you all to see it. So I now sort of peel it off in front of the camera. There we go. Just going to hold it there so you can see the plate and the paper, and then we'll just pull off the paper. Oh, it's lovely and purple. I hold it up now. So you can see how the marks have really worked. The very strong marks and very strong purple ones are the touche and the crayon and some drawing ink. We've got some touche work down here. Just rest that down here, and there's some really beautiful what's called reticulation going on, where sort of the touche has separated and resisted certain marks in the water, and it's left a sort of really ripply effect, and that's evident when you get quite close to it. This is drawing ink down here, some spatters, and I think there's some prints from a sponge. This was a rubbing stick. You can kind of see very faint spots there. Rubbing stick again, and this was some crayon mark, and this was oil pastel, so not a lithographic tool, just a sort of, children's oil pastel. And I think this was where was that? No, that was a lithographic crayon. It hasn't picked up as strongly. I need to obviously press a bit harder or get a softer lithographic crayon, so one with more grease element. But nice, strong purple, magenta. And you can see, note how it hasn't picked up the black of the, so I'm just going to pop that over there. The black from the actual marks, the crayons and things like that, they won't print. So this is why we don't necessarily need to remove it. Now what I'm going to do now, in the same video, Going to get my press back to this way. Ready? So I'm going to ink this up again, which I'm going to do now. So exactly the same colour. Nice and damp again. More of this glorious magenta. That was Gwyneth again. And lithography, especially when working with traditional mediums, stone or zinc, it tends to build up in detail. So as you do more images and more rolling up of the plate, more detail gets filled in. So you tend not to use the first few prints in a zinc plate or stone run because they're not, so if I can get those rubbing stick areas, they're not as detailed or infilled as you want it. I found Mokulito, it tends not to be so sensitive in that sense, and you get actually a pretty good accuracy to your drawn marks with the first print. And also because you're working with wood grain, which after a few images will start to fill in and dominate the image, you can't get away with printing lots and lots of spares before you get the perfect lithograph, because by that time your wood grain will be dominant of the print. I'm just going to do a few more, but I think we're there. I was just seeing if I could get those spots a bit more. Oh, there's a nice blob of something there. There we go. So literally I've just inked up as I did before. Just going to get rid of some of those, nice quick roll to get rid of any tram lines. And the quick rolling, I'm not putting any pressure on, I'm just using the weight of the roller to roll over. And it also sharpens up the image. It stops any sort of fuzzy lines across your image. So any sort of areas of crisp detail, a quick light roll will help that. Okay, so we have another inked up plate. I'm just going to put that to the side there. What we're going to do now is I'm going to be getting out some extender. Extender, if you're in printmaking terms, is a transparent ink. And it's, just thinking where to go, there. And it's a tinting medium, so I'm going to be tinting it with some bright green, and always add drops of your colour, in my case green, to your extender, so you can control the amount of tint. If I added extender to my green, I'd end up with very little difference, and I'd also end up with a huge waste of ink. So it's better if you add drops to your extender. Now I've got a kind of probably add to 10% transparency of bright green, and I've gone for bright green not for aesthetics because it's a complete contrast to magenta. So what we're going to do now, and this is where I do bring out my little roller, just going to move those first of all. We're going to just make sure it's clean. Do what's called in printmaking a rollover. So I'm rolling out an incredibly thin layer of green ink, and you can change the viscosity of the ink depending on how thick your ink is. You tend with a rollover, you want it to be slightly oilier than your actual ink you use to make the marks, in our case the magenta. I haven't changed the consistency of the ink because I found for the Mokulito, straight from the tub, the extender I used works really nicely. What we're going to do now, just going to move things out of the way. My Mokulito has been sitting here just so the plywood is no longer completely wet, it's just nice and damp. You don't want it wet because if I roll this over this and this is wet, none of this will transfer. So I'm going to put that there, just you saw slightly in short, which is great. Now if I were to take this and roll over straight over the top of my Mokulito plate, I would end up with the transparent green mixing with the magenta on my plate. So it's a good example, I would mix there and I'd go kind of brown basically. And I'd have a sort of greeny magenta-y background. So I'll be changing the whole thing. What's key with the rollover is you can start playing with, just bear with me, opening up my plan chest. You can start playing with the use of masks. This is just tissue paper. And I've not cut it to any particular size. And if I'm to lay that over the top there, where I have, that was the sort of the purple magenta, I'm actually going to, and then I roll over, I'm going to be preventing any green ink from going onto that area. And so I have a contrast suddenly. I have clean purple against some green. Now I'm just doing some random masks which will hopefully be able to show you sort of potential. So I'm not really thinking or cutting. And just kind of placing them to give you the best chance to see what is going on. So I've got 3 laid down. You'll see them more clearly when we print. Get rid of that. Oop, that one's wanting to curl up, so we're going to lay it the other way. Now the rollover, it is really important you have a roller wider than your printing plate. Now I'm applying nice even pressure. The masks will obviously stick to the roller, doesn't matter. Okay, you see, just peel those off. I'll do that now so I don't leave them on the roller. They can just disappear. Yeah. Okay. Now you might be able to catch in the light there's a change in areas where I had the masks. It'll be easier when I'm printing it. I'm just checking that all looks good. All looks good. Now with Mokulito you can print on damp paper. On the Japanese paper I find it not necessary, but if you have got some very faint marks like the rubbing, you know I have those spots of rubbing stick that didn't really pick up, a little bit of damp paper would help get those and help pick up the detail. Just going to increase the pressure ever so slightly on my press. Back we go under. I'm just going to put some ink here, but I'm just going to pull it up. See if I can get it out of that reflection of the sun. Now I'm actually going to do that again because that is incredibly faint for the camera. I mean, I can see it, my transparent green is really faint. So I'm just going to quickly pull another one. It'll take me 2 minutes because where I'm sitting and where I'm standing in the studio in the natural light, there's a big difference and you can see a green background. But for you guys on the camera, that's probably nigh on impossible to pick up. So I'm just going to be really quick. Quick bit of, get some more magenta out. And the advantage of rollovers is it allows you to control more of colour variations. So if you had, for instance, you inked up in this stage you did in red, and then you were to go and do a yellow rollover, you would get a orange overlay where the two overlaid. But where they did not overlay, and you put masks down, you would end up with a clean red, so you can have a real play. And rollovers are very versatile. It's well worth having a play with them, your Mokulito plate. Especially as the ply grain begins to become more clear, the rollover will pick up on that plywood grain. So it's a real sort of thing of beauty. Just going down in that. Ooh. More water than I expected there. Give that a second to just dry before I do the last roll. I'm just getting another piece of paper, a piece of Japanese paper, in my stash down here somewhere. Okay, we'll give that a cut. Brilliant. What I'm going to do now, just do that last roll of magenta. Now that plate isn't quite so damp. And I'm going to quick few rolls. Nice magenta plate. I'm just going to increase the strength of my green rollover quite significantly because the contrast in the camera really didn't pick that up. So we're just going to put a load more strong green down. Better. Ooh, much nicer. Cool colour, isn't it, Granny? Okay. What I'm also going to do now is just cut out a few more masks, which I have. I say they're just random shapes. Nothing. I use tissue paper. You can use thicker paper, but obviously if you use really thick paper, then the press or your hand motions, whichever you're doing, struggle to get behind the depth of the mask paper. They struggle to deal with the depth of the paper you're using for a mask, and you end up with a little white line behind it. With these transparencies, it doesn't really make much difference. You probably won't notice that. But if you use a rollover of a neat colour, like straight from the tub green, you would notice that. Right. Now with a rollover, you tend to go over once. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Great. Leave that there. Okay, you might be able to see, you can see now more clearly where I've put the masks. Let's get that printed. And you don't obviously have to use masks. That's just me introducing something that might be of interest. It's not a necessity. It just gives you that option again of you've got another colour you're playing with, the base colour, the magenta, the green, and also the mix of the two. Much better. So I gently peel this off. Let's try and the reflection's being a bit funny here on my white paper, so I'll come and hold it at an angle this way. There you go. So you can see where the masks are. As I say, mine are very crude. I just showed the difference. You can see the difference where the green overlays the magenta. You've got a really rich tone. You can see where the masks were, those shapes that look quite pale, because there's no green background. And you've got this beautiful transparent green going over the whole thing. So masks are really versatile. And what we'll be doing in the next video is I'll be showing you how we can begin to interact with rollovers as a sort of artistic approach. Excuse the stretching. I have this Mokulito plate that's been etching. It's a very just basic pattern using different marks and different textures of techniques. You can see some lovely different marks. That's again been undergone for a while. What I'm going to be doing is we're going to be cutting this up with the fret saw. So we've got different shapes and different strips, and each one of those will have a different rollover, a different colour, and we'll be re-jigsawing it together, similar to jigsaw liner cut. So Mokulito has that versatility. It's plywood. You can start integrating cutting it up with a jigsaw, which is really, really liberating. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to try and do that right now, film it right now, because I've kind of got the inks out, so we'll go with that. So I'm going to stop this one, I'm going to go and get the saw out, cut that up, and I'll be back in 10 minutes.